I think in Florida now, anyone can hunt a python and you get a prize.
Well, in South Florida now, officials are working to eliminate an invasive species with furry robots.
Hidden deep in the wetlands of Florida, officials carried out one of the most unusual wildlife experiments in history. They released hundreds of robotic animals, not for observation, but to fight back against a living invasion. Their target, a snake so powerful it had conquered the Everglades. These mechanical decoys were supposed to turn the tide. Instead, what followed raised a chilling question. Had Florida outsmarted nature, or created something it could no longer control? At dawn, the Florida Everglades looks like another world. Silver mist floats above still water, and herons glide low over sawgrass fields that stretch for miles. But beneath that peace lies a battlefield. The Everglades, once home to countless native animals, now hides a silent enemy. For years, the Burmese python has ruled these wetlands, devouring everything from rabbits to deer. It doesn't strike with venom, but with silence, wrapping, crushing, and swallowing its prey whole. Locals have stopped seeing raccoons. Marsh rabbits have vanished. Even the alligators have learned to stay cautious. What began as a few escaped pets decades ago has become one of the worst wildlife invasions in U.S. history. Florida's ecosystem is collapsing in slow motion, and every attempt to stop it has failed. Yet as the sun rises this morning, something new stirs in the grass, something human-made and quietly watching. The Burmese python was never meant to be here. It came to Florida through the exotic pet trade in the 1980s, sold as small, beautiful pets, no more dangerous than a cat. But they grew. Some reached over 20 feet, weighing more than 100 pounds. When owners couldn't handle them, they were released into the wild. Then came Hurricane Andrew in 1992, destroying reptile facilities and freeing countless snakes. The Everglades became their paradise, warm, wet, full of prey that had never evolved to fear them. The results were devastating. In some regions, mammal populations fell by more than 90%. The ecosystem's balance collapsed. Every python captured seemed to prove the same thing. For every one caught, 100 more slithered unseen. Scientists realized they weren't just fighting snakes, they were fighting evolution itself, fast, adaptable, and unstoppable. Desperation turned science into spectacle. In 2013, Florida launched the Python Challenge, a public competition offering cash rewards for every snake captured. Thousands signed up with airboats, flashlights, and machetes, ready to hunt. The media called it a war against the swamp's invaders. But after weeks of sweat and risk, the result was humiliating. Just 68 snakes captured. Biologists barely noticed the difference. The swamp had swallowed another effort whole. Even professional bounty hunters struggled. Each time one python was removed, new eggs hatched somewhere else. Funding increased, programs expanded, and yet the map of sightings grew darker every year. By the end of the decade, the conclusion was clear. Brute force couldn't win this war. If the Everglades was to be saved, it would need something more cunning. And so, Florida's scientists began searching for an ally, not of strength, but of instinct. That ally came with a wagging tail. In 2020, Florida introduced a pair of detector dogs, Truman, a black Labrador, and Eleanor, a Dutch Shepherd. Both were trained to smell what humans could not, the faint musk of a python's trail. Day after day, they tracked through chest-deep water, guided only by scent and patience. Their success stunned the experts. They found snakes hidden under thick brush, inside old culverts, even buried beneath logs. Each capture revealed something new: patterns of breeding, migration routes, unseen nests. For the first time, the hunt felt possible. But the Everglades is not kind. The dogs needed boots to protect their paws from sawgrass, vests to cool their bodies, and handlers to guard them from gators. The victory was small, fragile, and limited by scale. 2 dogs could only do so much. The snakes, meanwhile, kept multiplying in silence. Out of desperation, a bold and controversial idea took shape. Scientists knew what pythons wanted most: marsh rabbits, once the swamp's most common prey. If live rabbits could lure the snakes into the open, perhaps they could be captured faster. So, in small, controlled studies, biologists placed caged rabbits along swamp trails, their scent spreading through the reeds. The results were immediate. Pythons arrived by the dozens, drawn like magnets. But so did outrage. Animal rights groups condemned the experiment as cruel and unethical. Photos of trembling rabbits surrounded by coils of predators sparked headlines and protests. The outcry grew so loud that funding for the project was pulled. Yet beneath the backlash lay one undeniable truth: the experiment worked. Pythons could be baited. Now all Florida needed was a decoy that could do the same job without a heartbeat. When engineers and biologists met, innovation followed. They designed a decoy that looked, smelled, and even moved like a real marsh rabbit, but wasn't alive. Synthetic fur coated layers of polymer and heat pads. Solar panels powered subtle ear twitches and faint body warmth. Inside, chemical cartridges released a scent that mimicked real mammal musk. Hidden beneath it all was a motion-triggered camera and transmitter. They called them robo-rabbits. Each unit could survive heat, storms, and weeks of exposure without maintenance. It wasn't just bait, it was intelligence. The goal wasn't to kill snakes, but to track them, to see how they moved and where they bred. After years of defeat, the plan sounded almost absurd, but Florida approved the field test. 120 robotic rabbits were built, charged by sunlight, and prepared for release into the heart of the Everglades.
The morning of deployment felt more like a military operation than science. Crews in camouflage carried crates of soft, silent shapes to key locations: canal edges, dry ridges, and nesting zones mapped by drones. As the sun rose, each decoy was activated. Their tiny ears twitched, their bodies warmed to life, capture the moment when something massive drew near. Within hours, the first signals came in. Cameras transmitted ripples of movement, then flickers of scales. The snakes were coming. And as one coiled around a decoy under the moonlight, scientists realized the machines had worked. But something about the footage unsettled them. The snakes weren't just attacking, they seemed to be studying. Every activation pinged a growing digital map, a live, glowing web of python activity stretching across South Florida. Each decoy became a node, feeding images and motion data into a central system. For the first time, scientists could see how pythons moved, where they nested, and how they hunted. The results were astonishing. Patterns emerged: migration corridors, breeding clusters, seasonal trails. The team had turned the Everglades into a living, breathing network of information. But something else appeared in the data. A few decoys showed synchronized motion triggers, as if multiple snakes were approaching together. That kind of behavior had never been recorded before. Were the snakes adapting to the decoys or to each other? What started as an experiment to lure predators was now mapping a kind of intelligence no one expected. Weeks later, the celebration faded into concern. Several decoys vanished completely, dragged off or destroyed. When recovered, their outer shells were crushed and shredded. In one case, a camera feed captured a python wrapping around a decoy, then stopping. Not to strike, but to squeeze slowly, testing the resistance as if it knew something was wrong. Some began to fear the experiment had taught the snakes more than anyone intended. With funding tight and public scrutiny rising, scientists faced a dilemma: expand the program or shut it down. But the data was too valuable to abandon. As one researcher put it, "We finally understand them, and that's what makes this terrifying." The Everglades had always been a place where survival meant adaptation. But what happens when the invader begins adapting to us? Today, the robotic rabbits still twitch quietly under the Florida sun. Their fur gathers dew, their sensors hum. And somewhere nearby, in the reeds, a Rio python watches, waiting. The war between humans and nature has entered a new phase, one fought with machines disguised as life. To some, this is victory, proof that technology can reclaim the wild. To others, it's a warning that humanity is crossing into places it doesn't understand. As one scientist said, "We didn't just build a decoy, we built a mirror." The Everglades is now both laboratory and battlefield, its silence broken by the faint mechanical heartbeat of man-made prey. And as night falls, the question lingers like fog over the swamp. Did Florida finally outsmart nature, or awaken something it can never control?